This is exactly what makes our system so powerful. AI AI is reshaping our world every single day, and as students, exploring these technologies gives us a massive head start on building the future. We have an incredible session lined up for you today, so let's quickly look at our agenda for today. First, we'll share a brief introduction to the Eethal Foundation and our mission. Then, we'll introduce SOCAL Tamil style to highlight how youth leadership ties into our community. Following that, we will officially introduce our guest speaker for the day, which will lead directly into our core speaker presentation on AI. After the presentation, we will have a Q&A session, which will be completely moderated by one of our student volunteers. And finally, we will wrap things up with some closing remarks and thank yous. Before we begin, just a few quick Google Meet housekeeping rules to ensure everything runs smoothly. Please keep your microphones muted during the presentation to avoid any background music noise. For the Q&A session, we'll be taking questions through the chat, and if anything comes to mind during the talk, just drop your questions into the Google Meet chat box at any time. Our student moderator will be keeping an eye on it and will read them out to our speaker at the end. Lastly, feel free to turn on your cameras if you're comfortable. It's always great to see friendly faces in our student community. Now, to kick things off, I want to share a little bit about the amazing organization that brings us together today, the Eethal Foundation. Eethal is a nonprofit organization that stands for education and empowerment through applied languages. Its main mission is to promote volunteerism among youth right here in North America. For many first-generation Tamil teenagers, Eethal bridges a unique gap. It allows us to give back to our roots and help underprivileged youth worldwide while simultaneously practicing preserving our mother tongue. Whether it's through the Young Translator Program and where team volunteers translate stories into Tamil, or the Spoken English Initiative, where the volunteers teach foundational oral skills to government school students in India, Eethal gives youth a platform to lead. From virtual volunteering to hosting summer STEM programs, webinars, tech workshops like 3D printing and NASA or JPL site store, Eethal empowers students like us to become global citizens. To take us into the next part of our program and talk about a critical chapter of this leadership journey, I would now love to hand the floor over to my fellow student, Abhishraddha, who will share more about the SOCAL Tamil style. Abhishraddha, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Shisha. I'd like to take a moment to share a little about STYLE, the Student Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program of the SOCAL Tamil organization. The STYLE program is an initiative of the SOCAL Tamil organization for middle, high school, and college students. Through workshops, mentoring, and student-led initiative, STYLE provides opportunities for students to explore leadership, STEM, public speaking, volunteering, career awareness, entrepreneurship, and youth wellness. We're also proud of our partnership with Eethal Foundation since 2021, reflecting our shared commitment to education, service, and student development. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mrs. Anupriya Ramraj. Mrs. Anupriya Ramraj is a CEO and co-founder of Vaultzy and technology leader with more than 25 years of industry experience working in AI, cloud, and digital transformation. A former partner in PwC's cloud and AI practice, has advised global organizations on technology innovation and has been recognized as one of the top 25 global digital transformation leaders and the top 100 influencer for hybrid cloud. She's also a recipient of 3 US patents, a member of the Forbes Technology Council, and she also serves on the Strategic AI Innovative Board at the University of San Francisco. Beyond her professional accomplishments, Mrs. Anupriya is a speaker, a thoughtful leader, and a co-author of a recently published book with her daughter, reflecting her passion for learning and guiding the future generations. Through her work, writing, and community involvement, she remains deeply committed to empowering women and youth while advocating for a thoughtful and responsible approach to AI, and helping students and professionals prepare for an evolving future. Today's webinar, Don't Fear AI, Learn to Lead It, explores the opportunities and challenges presented by AI and how students, professionals, and communities can better understand and prepare for a rapidly evolving world. As students, we hear often about AI's impact. Today, we have the opportunity to learn from someone who has been forefront of AI and technology transformation, and who is passionate about preparing the next generation for what's ahead. Mrs. Anupriya, we're delighted to have you with us today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Abhi. Thank you for that introduction. Really appreciate it. And a big call out to Eethal and Style for giving me this opportunity to speak to all the students. So thank you very much. I'd like to start this off by doing like a quick poll. You can put that in the chat. If you could put 2 lines around where are you from and what do you hope to get from this webinar, would really like to see that. Right. So thank you very much. Are my slides visible?
Not yet. No.
Not yet. Okay, I'll get that going. Right. Can you see them now?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Again, Abhi already introduced me, so we'll jump right into the agenda. And we want to keep this very interactive, but we're not taking, well, the way we want to do that is like, we want to make sure that you put your questions in and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation, but keep your questions coming in the chat. I'll also be introducing somebody who's joining me from the healthcare industry, and also will be sharing his perspective, Sundar Pasupati, who's on the call, and then being part of the Q&A as well. So let's jump right in. So today we want to kind of, I know you come from different backgrounds, some of you in high school, some of you middle school, some of you in college. And I think wherever we turn, whenever we put on the TV, there's something about AI. And it's come to a point where even with big, large companies, it's almost like every prospectus, every yearly statement they put, they have to make sure that they incorporate what is their AI strategy in there. It's become a must. So why is that? What is the promise? Why is this such a big game-changing technology? And then we'll jump into like, how is it reshaping different industries, right? The impact is going to be different across different industries. Is it all good, or is there risks and implications? Let's do a little bit of that. And then I think what's most on your minds, I want to make sure we have the most time for that, is around what's the impact on jobs. And as young professionals, as young students, how can you prepare for that, right? So that's what I'm going to spend most of the time on. And then as a sneak preview, this was not meant to be like a fully technology showcase, but I'm going to show like a quick demo just to kind of tease out like what's the art of the possible and get you folks to reimagine. Because my goal with this session is like, I'm kind of making you interested to become entrepreneurs of the future, right? So with that, let's keep moving ahead. So what's this whole thing about AI? Why this buzz, right? Like, you all know AI has been there for many, many decades, right? Like in the 1950s, Alan Turing was talking about how human intelligence can be mimicked by machines, right? So it's not new, right? And we've had AI for years and decades, right? So what really changed, right? So we had this evolution, right? Like, so we had AI to machine learning to deep learning, but generative AI became available to the public in the 2022 timeframe, right? Somewhere towards the end of 2022, depending on how early a release you adopted. And what did that do? That completely changed the game, right? That's when ChatGPT was released by OpenAI. And what did it do? Like, it brought AI into the hands of everybody, right? So you did not have to be a software developer to make sure to use AI, right? So you didn't have to go and write reams and reams of code to be able to use AI. So it just made AI most accessible, and then it completely changed the game going from there, right? So yes, AI is not new, but we've evolved, and generative AI is the one that's really, really making the waves out there. So what is this generative AI thing? And I think I'd like to get your perspective on it. So if you're on the chat, I would like to get like all of yours, like one-liners on what do you think generative AI is, right? So generative AI is based on this technology called GPT. And I think this is a term that I think the majority of you are very, very familiar with. It stands for generative pre-trained transformers. And what does that really mean? Like for the very first time, you're able to create content, AI is able to create. And then how does that do that? Because it's pre-trained on all the information that's out there. So basically they took these models and the large language models and they trained them on every piece of available information that's available out there, right, on the internet. And then the transformer is basically the neural network architecture that's behind that, right? So that's the GPT. And then what can it do? Not only can it create, it can improve, it can summarize, it can answer Q&A. Q&A was the big hit with ChatGPT, right? And then it's not just text, it can do data, it can do code, it can do images. And then you're all very, very familiar with the popular models that are out there, right? OpenAI, Anthropic, Claude, Perplexity, name it, right? Everybody's got their own favorites. I'll be putting out these poll questions, and I'm definitely going to take a look at it during Q&A and later. It's like, if you've got a favorite, or maybe you've got one favorite or two favorite, what's your favorite model, and what do you use it for today? If you could put that out in the chat, that'll be great. All right, and we'll see the answers coming in. Right. And so, as this technology landed in the 2022, late 2022 timeframe, there was a quick realization among the large organizations about, hey, this is going to completely change our strategy, right? Like, no matter which industry you were in, right? Like, it's if you were designing products, you could more rapidly do prototypes. If you were in the arts industry, right, you could use it to generate art and music. Especially if you were in the film industry, the film workers union kind of actually went on strike because now you could write entire scripts for movies using this technology, right? And then even data scientists felt threatened because, yes, you could augment data, you could analyze data using this technology. So you need a whole slew of data scientists, right? You still needed them, but it kind of made the problem set a little bit easier to solve, right? And then, of course, document Q&A and coding that many of you, I'm sure, have already experienced with. So this was pretty groundbreaking technology, right? And then one of the key angles around this technology, this large language models, was the way that it is naturally suited for natural language processing, right? So as you guys already probably know that LLMs, for example, OpenAI, can deal with almost 80 plus languages with a very, very high accuracy, over 90%. Right? It can deal with even more languages if you bring down the accuracy metric, right? So it is so suited for language processing, right? And so things like language translation, things like chatbots, being able to reply in different languages, all of that became very, very seamless with this technology, right? And what does that mean when it comes to certain roles? And these are roles that are across industries, right? Like, let's look at some of the trends. So now that we know what the technology is, let's look into like, what does this mean for different roles, which are like cross industries, right? So every industry you take has support agents, right? So these are the people that answer the phone. If you're booking a car, if you are talking to a healthcare payer or provider, if you are name it, right? Anytime you want to get a service, either you use these contact centers and you use these people that you talk to. What they quickly realized is that even these people, if you arm them with generative AI tools, they could work up to 35% faster. right? So they surveyed all these support agents, and typically these support agents, you got to put them through a lot of training, right? They learn how to answer questions, but because of LLMs, you could teach them basically with kind of a chat base around, like, if the user asks a question, you just type in the question and then it gives you some pointers on how you should answer. And then the risk on this is that at some point, the thinking is that this technology could replace all of the support agents at some point, right? So there is that risk out there, and I'll be pointing out these risks as we go through these scenarios and use cases, right? So you can see where this technology is heading. Today, it is a great tool to be able to support agents. Many of the companies are using it also as a way of initial capture, right? So as I'll show you an example of this being used as well. So typically you have these sites with the chat bots, and that today, and they used to be very, very basics, right? Like you had to ask the question in the exact right manner to get an answer. But now today with LLMs, you could ask the question in any language and get the answers, right? So some of the companies are using these OpenAI and other LLM technologies to be able to answer questions. And even when it comes to a human agent, they are backing them up with support from these LLMs, because they can look at huge knowledge bases, because no agent is going to know all about everything that is in a company, but to be able to answer the client and give them the right things, sometimes it's good to have that support as well, right? So one particular function that's going through a lot of change. Another function that's going through a lot of change is something that you guys are probably very, very interested in, is around basically the whole industry of software development, right? This industry has really, really grown, right? Like, I'd like to know, like, how many of you with intending to be software developers or intending to pick software development as a career for you. This industry started off with mainframe developers, right? A few decades ago, and there were like a few hundred of them, right? And then it expanded and expanded to now there's thousands and thousands of programmers around the globe. But as generative AI and these LLM tools landed, what the quick realization was, every little aspect of the software development lifecycle is going to get turbocharged with this technology. Okay, let's take it one step at a time, right? Like, you capture requirements. You typically have a product manager that's working with a team to kind of understand the customer requirements and document them. And if you're using an agile technology, agile methods of working, they might do what's known as user stories to capture those requirements, right? Features and user stories. Today, if you put in a couple of bounding conditions and you try to describe what business you are and what you're trying to develop, your LLM tools can basically give you all the requirements that you need to put in. It might not be 100% accurate, but it makes the product manager's job much, much easier, right? Then let's take the job of actually coding up stuff. Even when it comes to coding, you probably all have heard about OpenAI's Codex or Claude Code, right? So you give it a problem set and it's able to produce the code for you, right? Again, it might not be perfect. It really depends on your prompting skills. It depends on what background skills you have established for your Codex or your Claude Code session. But it gives you a really big boost, right? Even the bigger companies like Microsoft came out and said they use GitHub Copilot, and now they're using Claude Code as well. Internally in Microsoft, more than 50% of the development is being done by these tools, or most of the code is being produced by these tools, is what their leadership has come out and publicly announced, right? So you can see it as a boost, but you can also think about like the impact that we have seen in the layoffs in these companies, because you don't need that many software developers potentially, right? But it's not just in requirements or development. Even when it comes to testing, when it comes to user adoption, every aspect of it is getting turbocharged with this technology, right? So the entire software development lifecycle. The positive is that you can do more with less. So as young folks, I would say that the great opportunity in front of you is that you no longer need a huge team to go build a product. You could think about a product and you can build it basically in your basement with a bunch of these tools, right? And now as we get into agentic systems, you basically set up a bunch of your agents to do a lot of this work, and you could basically build your company in your garage with just a bunch of agents and these tools, right? So, so enormous opportunity, enormous pressure in terms of the bigger companies and the layoffs that you keep hearing about, but also enormous opportunity for young folks like you to really disrupt the system there. And the thinking on the street is that there is going to be a time when there is going to be a unicorn. When they refer to unicorn, these are typically billion-dollar companies. That's probably possible by just a solo founder. This technology is going to be so powerful that without anybody else except a solo founder, you could get a unicorn status, right? So the promise is out there, right? It's still difficult. It's still difficult because finally you have to convince people to adopt your software and stuff like that. But a lot of the functions, right, like your development, your marketing, your HR, every one of those you potentially can bring in agents, AI agents to do some of that, right? So amazing opportunity, amazing challenge, right? Now I'm going to take a step back and think about also one of the high grills, holy grills about all of the product development was that, hey, you always needed humans to be able to do the actual product design, right? So that was always like the big thing, right? But now even that is getting challenged, right? Because automatically these LLMs can generate designs. They can help you do rapid prototypes, right? And they can even help you like to generate synthetic data for training if you're doing an AI system, right? So even the holy grail of product design is getting challenged. So now I'm going to take like a couple of key industries, in this case, healthcare, legal, and finance, and just kind of do a double click into like, what do we see as the major disruptors and the opportunities across all of these with this technology, right? So let's take healthcare for an example, right? So these tools go both ways, right? Like many folks are getting their reports, their lab reports, and they're actually putting it through ChatGPT and getting their own personalized advice around medicine, right? So that's what these tools are, good or bad, right? Correct or wrong. Sometimes it gives you options that are not correct, right? Or are least likely to happen, and people get scared. But people are doing it, right? Like, so which is one aspect of it. But let's look at this from a physician's lens, right? What does this technology allow them to do? With this technology, like typically physicians spent a lot of time kind of documenting the case rather than treating the patient, right? Like, so because of legal and other reasons, like when they see one patient, they have to write like tons and tons of notes in the system about what did they discuss, what are next steps, etc. Right? Everything that they have to convey to the patient, they have to then document in the systems. But today, with systems that are generative AI systems, there's a couple of niche tools on the market. As soon as the physician is done with this conversation, right? There's one called a bridge, for example. They basically click one button and it automatically takes the physician-patient conversation, translates, takes the right aspects of it and puts it in different parts of the system where the patient notes need to be captured, right? What was the diagnosis? What is the prescription? What are the next steps, right? What is the follow-up? And it puts it all in the system, and what the physician has to do is they basically just look at it and say, yes, this looks right, and go on to the next step. So no more do the physicians have to come home and spend tons and tons of time updating the systems, right? Also, hopefully the physicians, because of this technology, can sit down with the patients and really, really have a conversation rather than spend most of their time typing in the systems, right? So positive. There's also some negative, I would say, some borderline implications to it. There is technology emerging around, for example, doing medical diagnosis using these latest models, right? So I'm aware of several startups, right? Pangea data is one that comes to mind. There's several in the market that you could look up. And what these are getting into is what's known as clinical decision making, right? It's still not completely approved by the FDA, because they still want the human in the loop to make the physician to make the decision, right? But what these tools are getting really, really good at is like looking at family history, looking at all the symptoms, and then really, really coming up with what could be the diagnosis, right? And today, what is allowed by the FDA, which basically regulates all these clinical decision-making systems, is that these systems can today recommend stuff. They can do even cohorts of stuff. So this Pangea data, which I mentioned, what they do is like they try to put cohorts together, saying that this group of patients, because of their family history, because of all of the medical testing that has happened, because of all the symptoms, is more at risk of kidney disease. Or this group of patients are more at risk of heart disease. And then this enables this kind of cohort mapping, then enables the physician to make sure that they don't ignore any of the symptoms, and that they pay a little bit more attention to say, okay, if this patient is at risk of kidney disease, what should I be watching out for, right? So you can get to that extent, but then the actual diagnosis, FDA really wants the physicians to do that, right? And rightfully so, right? We always want the human in the loop to do that, right? The same with medical imaging analysis, right? Today, these tools are becoming more and more, they say even more accurate than humans in kind of spotting things like, especially, for example, breast cancer in a mammogram, or being able to figure out MRI reports, right? So, or X-ray reports. So these technologies are really maturing, but then we really want the radiologist to be part of that loop and do the final diagnosis, right? And where is the promise on these technologies in the medical? It's kind of limitless, boundless, like especially in the healthcare field. The next couple of years are going to be really game changing. I mean, there's going to be so much today. Like if with the pharma companies, before they produce any drugs, they spend, I think the average is about 6 years to get a drug to a market, and about $2 billion spent just on the drug discovery and development, right? That's the average statistic for getting new drugs out on the market. But with these tools, not only can you do the discovery faster, because your LLM, for example, can give you ideas around, hey, try this particular combination of molecules. It can give you certain things that make it go faster. It can also help you with all of your FDA approvals, all the paperwork that's needed. And so hopefully that six-year average time that takes to typically develop a drug and bring it to the market, hopefully gets shrunk, and we see a whole bunch of new drugs on the market, right? This is healthcare, right? Again, an industry that's going to go through a lot of change thanks to this technology. And as you can see, as young professionals, young students, there is huge potential for you to come in and disrupt the system as well, right? Now I'm going to switch gears to another industry that's going through a lot of change, which is the legal industry, right? As you know, lawyers spend a lot of time analyzing, looking at previous cases before they can decide what they want to do for their current case, and how do they want to go and present their current case in front of a judge, etc. So there's a whole bunch of tools that are coming up around this, right? Like around doing the research, building out your case, right? And Harvey is one of the leaders in this space. It's a startup that's making a lot of inroads around legal research and being able to craft cases, and it's being used by a lot of law firms, right? What does that mean? If you are thinking about being a lawyer, now is the best time to go and do your own law firm, right? Because you don't need a huge team. You can use these tools, and you can basically, like some of the advantages that a bigger law firm has in being able to have a lot of people do the research, now you can do the same using these tools, right? So it's the best time to be a lawyer, so it democratizes it, makes it possible for you guys to go and really shake up the system as young new lawyers, right? But there's also negative implications. At least a couple of lawyers have been called out because they went before a judge and they presented a case without actually having done the research. So they simply took the LLM's word at what was being presented, and the LLM had hallucinated. You're going to hear this term a lot, hallucination, right? Where it makes up stuff. It doesn't have the right answer, but it really makes it up. So it looks correct, but it's not. So in this case, the lawyers presented like a prior case, because lawyers always cite prior cases that did not exist because the LLM had kind of put that forward. And then the judge kind of penalized the lawyers for doing it, because ultimately the lawyer is responsible for making sure that they bring the right data, right? So any usage of it, you always have to note that cautionary thing in there that yes, this technology can still hallucinate, that you have to verify it. You still need the human in the loop, right? Similarly, in the finance aspect of it, there is a huge there's a huge angle around being able to use it for example, financial advisory, right? Looking at the market, analyzing it, and then being able to suggest, right? Doing a lot of automated reports and narratives, etc. So huge potential in the finance industry as well. Right. Again, you will see across every industry, if you were to double click on it, there is huge potential, and some of these patterns will kind of repeat across these different industries, right? But I'm going to take a little bit of a sidebar and just kind of hit at like what are the ethical considerations, right? Yeah, it's great. It's great to have these across industries, and yes, they are going to get adopted. But what are the things to watch out for, right? One of the biggest concerns is around privacy, right? Like I told you about how GPT means that one of the is that it's being trained on data. It's been trained on vast amounts of data, right? And which then opens up this big loophole around, yeah, what if that is PII data? What if that is data that was a secret sauce for one company, right? What if that gets exposed, right? So huge implications in terms of privacy and security, right? And then there's the angle around what if there's biases in the data? And this comes up a lot with AI, right? Like if the data is biased, then all of your decisions that you make are going to be biased. One example that comes to mind is a couple of police departments across the country. They adopted a software that was basically trying to figure out like which neighborhoods are more at risk of crime, and then they were using that to kind of do staffing, right? Like how many police do they need for this particular precinct versus that particular area, etc. Right? But again, some of the legacy biases around demographics and race and was embedded in that some of that analysis, and it leads to biased answers, right? So always something to watch out for is bias in the data, getting then showing up as biased discussions, biased decisions. And last but not the least, the impact on jobs, right? This is huge, right? And then we're going to double click into that, right? Even the governments are very worried about the impact on jobs, and they're thinking about what kind of safety structures do they need to put in place, because they don't want a huge unemployment surge, right, because of this technology. Just double clicking on that privacy and the implications there. You probably heard about this leak that happened with Samsung employees. So they took some code that was very proprietary, that was basically their intellectual property, IP as they would call it, and they did not realize that by exposing it to a public LLM, right, they were basically exposing that whole IP. And that became a big leak. So that IP got leaked out. And so then Samsung came out. And one of the things big organizations have done is that they forbid their employees from using the public ChatGPT or public Claude interfaces. Instead, they've put together like internal endpoints for these same technologies, which only the company employees can get to. right? So rather than training the public LLM with all of the data from the company, only the private LLM gets trained, right? The private LLM endpoint. So that's something that to watch out for. If you put sensitive data out there, then somebody else can write the right prompt and get you a sensitive data. So that's something that you should always be aware of. Then let's think about all the healthcare data that people are putting out there, right? So HIPAA is a regulation which basically from the government, which basically is about making sure that healthcare data is kept private. And so if you're a doctor or if you're taking your patient's data and exposing it to these LLMs, you might be in violation of HIPAA if that's a public LLM, right? So these are things to watch out for. And then there's a whole slew of regulations that are coming up around this technology, but the regulations are kind of going to lag behind this technology, right? So the European Union has the AI Act. They were the first to kind of start doing these regulations. In the US, I think there's a conscious decision not to over-regulate because we don't want it to stop progress, right? So it's always like a balancing game. If you over-regulate this technology, you could be stopping the progress of this technology, and another country could overtake you. But if you under-regulate it, then you might get into all sorts of issues with all the privacy concerns, the bias, et cetera, that we talked about, right? So at least the European Union has a very common sense law around it with the AI Act, where they basically said that if the content is AI generated, then that has to be disclosed to customers, right? Consumers. So you cannot use AI and not disclose it to your consumers. That's a simple kind of a baseline coming out of the AI Act from the European Union, right? And you're going to see more of these laws coming up. And again, different countries are going to be in different stages in terms of how much they want to regulate this technology. Now I'm going to pause and I'm going to go into the section that I think most of you as young adults are going to be very, very, very interested about, which is like, okay, what does that mean? I hear so much in the news about job losses by AI. I hear so much in the news about, hey, software engineers will not get a job. Is that true? What aspect of it is true? How much of it is true? What's the good and bad behind this, right? Like, so I'm going to try to share this with as many metrics so that you can get a balanced view around it, right? Like any other angle, there's always like two different groups. You have the alarmists who are saying like, hey, this whole thing is going to crash and really cause a mass unemployment. And then there's the other group of people that are saying, yes, this technology is the best thing that happened to mankind. It's going to help us so much in terms of our quality of life, right? So, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And so let's look at this through the metrics, through the lens of how it's being analyzed, right? So Microsoft basically came up with what's known as they're calling as the AI applicability score. So they took a whole bunch of jobs, right, hundreds and hundreds of jobs, and then they analyzed that in terms of how much of what it's done on a day-to-day basis in this particular role is going to be impacted by AI, or the other way around, it's like how much of that role can actually be done by AI. So that's why it's called the AI applicability score, right? And let's take what's at the top of the list, right? Like interpreters and translators. Like we already talked about how LLMs are so suited for language translation, right? So if you were planning to have a career around doing language translation, then you should think hard, because that's one of the roles that it's going to be most impacted because it's got a high AI applicability score, right? So, and then if you look at number 6 on the list, the customer service representatives, the folks that answer the phone and support customers, we already talked about how LLMs are really, really suited because they can really look at huge knowledge bases and come up with the answers for the questions from customers, right? So again, you can see that the AI applicability score is large, and that's something that's going to be impacted, right? So again, this analysis is is available publicly. And so I would encourage all of you students to go look at this and study these cores, right? And then that way you can make like really informed decisions about how you want to shape your careers. Another another analysis was done by Anthropic. They took a slightly different view on this, right? Like, so they decided to go industry by industry, and they looked at theoretically how much of what's being in that industry could potentially be covered by AI, and which is the one in blue. And then they looked at how much of that is covered today, right? So just because something can be covered by AI doesn't mean that it's already being covered by AI. So they wanted to say, okay, what is the future outlook on how much of this industry would be taken over by AI versus what is being done today, which is the thing in red. And so where did they see the maximum impact of AI? They saw it, of course, in computer programming, right? Computers and math, right? Something that they believe that AI is going to do a lot of that work, right? Even architecture and engineering, they see a huge impact. They see a huge impact on the legal field. We already talked about legal analysis of cases, etc., right? And then even arts and media, they believe is going to be is going to see a huge impact. They did not see a big impact when it comes to, for example, construction jobs or agriculture, for example, right? So those are least impacted, right? So this is the Anthropic industry by industry analysis, right? Yes, and what are some of the key takeaways? So if your job involves empathy, like take the role of a physician, right? Today, your chatbot might give you an analysis, but really you go to a physician because you need somebody that is empathetic about your issue. You need a nurse that really cares about you, that's more of a caretaker, right? So jobs that involve empathy, that involve high level of decision-making, that involve on-site presence with a lot of permutations and combinations, right? People always quote this plumber example, right? Like when a plumber comes into your house, there's so many variabilities around like where the pipes are and what could be wrong with them. And there's so much high variability that it's harder to completely automate it out, right? Like, yes, there could be some automation, but yeah, it's harder there, right? So those are the jobs that are most resilient to AI, right? And then because you guys are young professionals, what is probably most worrying you is a phenomenon that's being studied, that it's the lower rungs of the career that are most impacted by AI, right? Not the most experienced folks, it's the lower rungs of the career. Because let's take, for example, the legal field. The lower rungs of the career spent a lot of time doing legal analysis, studying cases, writing up those case laws so that the senior lawyers could go present it in court. But now you could have a tool that does it for the senior lawyer, as opposed to hiring a junior lawyer to do a lot of that case prep and work, case analysis, right? So yeah, just one example. Similarly, on the coding side, IT side. So this is a phenomenon that's been pointed out, that the lower rungs of the career are disappearing, and the college graduates, the fresh college graduates, are the ones that are seeing the impact the most. But the World Economic Forum says, hey, don't despair, right? This is also going to create a lot of new jobs, right? There is so much potential to kind of modernize systems, right? The World Economic Forum's forecast is that 170 million new jobs will be created by 2030 by AI. Yes, there are going to be about 92 million is what they predicted of jobs that are going to get lost by AI. But if you do the math, there's still a net increase. Still, there's about 78 million net new jobs that get created, right? Even when you account for the job losses, right? So the World Economic Forum's outlook is still very, very positive when it comes to jobs, because there's new things that are coming up, right? Like we talked about a human in the loop, how you need AI ethicists, right? To make sure that your LLM is not biased, to make sure you verify all the outputs. You're going to need the human in the loop. You're going to need the governance committees, right? So you're going to need the people that are going to figure out what data needs to be fed into these LLMs, right? So there's new push and new opportunities that are emerging, right? And then there is also the opportunity to kind of look at old problems the new way, right? So this is where I'm going to really call on you as entrepreneurs. And since I think the organizers, they really wanted me to give a real world example, I'm going to try to see like if we can do a quick demo of this as well, right? So, in the case of Vaultzy, which is a startup that I did, that we're working on, it's basically an age-old problem, right? But now with agentic AI, there's a new way to solve it, right? And the basic problem is that people struggle with their most important records, right? So think of it like birth certificates, your identification documents. People cannot vote. People cannot go and do enroll for healthcare or any other benefits because they don't have this, or they cannot apply for jobs because they don't have this basic paperwork. And some of the people that are most impacted by this are the most underserved, like the foster kids, like the seniors that struggle with getting their benefits, right? Basically with Vaultzy, we created like a digital vault with which people can input all of their records. But what makes it more unique is the different ways to now solve it using agentic AI. So if you put a AI agent on top of your digital vault, now it can guide the people. It can tell the senior that, hey, your Medicare enrollment deadline is coming. Please go and do that. It can tell them that, hey, your passport is expiring in 6 months and you need 6 months validity to go and travel to your granddaughter's place. And so you better get this going, right? So you bring a different flavor of this, right? So you take an age-old problem, and with an agentic AI approach, you're able to bring a new aspect of it to solve the problem. So my call out to everybody, all the young professionals on this thing is like, think about what age-old problems are there and how you can bring a new approach to that, right? And I'm going to do a quick demo of something as well. So I'm assuming you can see this. So we talked about how this whole agentic, how you can do avatars, right, with AI, and how these avatars can now answer questions. So in this case, this is an example of a technology that's used for it. It's there's so many of these avatar building tools. This is a technology called as HeyGen, right? It helps you to build avatars. And how you build these avatars is that you basically say, in this case, this is a popular lawyer. You probably have seen her billboards because she's got billboards all across the country. Her name is Anne, right? And she's one of the top trial injury lawyers, right? Like, so if you have an accident, she says, call Anne, right? So what we did to create this avatar is like, we went and recorded a video of her and video and audio of her. And then we fed this through this HeyGen tool. And once we have this Anne avatar produced, all it takes is basically a prompt to get her to respond, right? So it looks like Anne's speaking, but it's essentially you basically have an avatar of Anne that's been created, right? And it speaks like her, it talks like her, it answers like her, and it's pretty amazing, right? So let me know.
I'm so sorry to hear about your accident. Please know that we are here to support you during this time. The most important thing is that you and your loved ones are safe. Everything else can be managed in time. Our team is already working hard to review your case and ensure everything is handled correctly. If you have any questions or just need someone to talk to, our dedicated support is always open for you. Take a deep breath and focus on your recovery. We will take care of the rest from here.
Could you guys hear that? I hope you did.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so this is the art of the possible, right? Like, so a lawyer, you can have an avatar of her and it's on her website. And so anybody that reaches out in any language, remember I told you this can do, this technologies can do 80 plus languages today, and it's going up day by day. It's pretty amazing, right? But I also want to plant a negative about the con side, right? There's also negatives about this. There's also this danger of deep fakes, right? When we did this recording of Anne, we had to make sure that we really got her approval, right? And this agent technology that we used to create her avatar, it made sure that we got an approval from her and we recorded it in the system. But there are there are technologies out there where you can create deep fakes. And what does that mean? Is like, for example, it takes my video and my voice, something that's available publicly, and it creates a deep fake of me producing a message that I did not approve, right? And so, especially when it comes to politics, when it comes to elections, etc., there is this whole thing about deep fakes and creating avatars without permission and getting it to send out wrong messages. So each technology definitely has its pros and cons, right? But the potential is limitless. I'm going to try to see if I can do one more quick demo if time permits, and then in the meantime, put your questions out there. We also have Sundar out here, so. Sundar, if you want to take this chance to introduce yourself. Sundar, can you hear us? And I think we might want to unmute Sundar and Avanti. Leon, if you're on the call.
Yes. Is it Sundar Pasupati or?
Sundar Pasupati and Avanti Ramraj. I'll let both of them kind of introduce themselves.
Okay, so I think you should be able to unmute now, Sundar and
Avanti.
Avanti.
Sundar, you
Good morning. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Are you guys able to hear me? Good. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Sundar Pasupati. I work for Delta Dental Insurance as a senior engineering manager in cloud and AI. I'm here because of the common connection between us, all of us, through music. Let me give you some background. Mr. Kotalango Lian, he was introduced by my friend Rajesh Sundaram, who lives in Folsom. They are classmates. And he mentioned about Mr. Leon being an Academy Award winner for 2016 in sound design, I believe. And then, incidentally, Anu also sings in the same band we are all part of in Folsom. So I'm really happy to be here. Nice meeting all of you. So I'll pass it over to Avanti.
Sundar, do you want to say a few words about your? I'll tell you folks about the book that we wrote about what's the impact of AI on jobs across 9 industries. And Sundar was one of the contributors, and he talked about, Sundar wrote in about what he thinks is the advice for the young generation. So Sundar, if you want to say a few words about that.
Correct. Yeah, thank you, Anupriya. Being in the insurance industry, we are bound by a lot of PHI and PII limitations and data security requirements. So in Delta, we are really going wild on, that's the right word, we are really going wild on AI right now, per the request from our CTO. But we are also very cautious about data security. Currently, the focus is primarily on increasing developer productivity using GitHub Copilot, which is really making a big impact on our development time. And in addition to that, we have also started using Claude Code in our environment. And I'm hearing from the developer team that has dramatically improved the productivity at least 3 to 4 times. And that's a great news. In addition to developer productivity, we are also trying to incorporate AI in a lot of our business applications related to IVR, related to provider behavior. And in addition to that, we are also doing a lot of work on doc intelligence. These are all Azure-specific tools, but we are in the beginning of that journey, and we have a lot to go. As far as the questions about the threat for jobs and how AI is going to impact the future generation, all I would say is fear not. The real thing is to find out what you want to do, like you always wanted to do. If you want to be in the entertainment industry, focus on that. If you want to be in healthcare, focus on it. If you want to be in product management, focus on it. But wherever you go, use AI tools which is going to complement your knowledge. It's not going to, there is no point in just learning AI tools separately. It should not be in silos. It's always about supporting what you want to do and increasing your efficiency. Plus, the existing workforce in the industry, they are not very comfortable, or they have not learned all the AI tools yet. So you being the fresh generation with your intent to learn things fast, your capability could complement the existing IT workers in the industry. So you will always be seen as a support force for taking the journey forward. So my best wishes to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sundar. Very well said about always using AI tools. And,
Yep.
And then I want to, I'll call on Avanti. Avanti, if you can hear us.
Hi, I'm Avanti. I'm Anupriya's daughter. I am currently a senior at Stanford, graduating in actually just 7 days now, in about a week. So I have seen kind of firsthand how a lot of products and just the world itself has been changed by AI, both with my friends who are building companies that use AI, or in classes where AI is becoming a much more prominent thing, both just how it can help us in education and also how we can restrict it to make sure that education, still continues and things like that. I had an amazing opportunity to actually work with OpenAI on their ChatGPT product for healthcare and also ChatGPT for health. So that was an interesting look into how things like medical advice can become more democratized and basically easier to access for people with AI. So I definitely also, I think with the other speakers, have a more positive view on AI's impact in our world, and agree that in terms of jobs and things like that, we've definitely found, especially in the book that me and my mom co-authored, that there are certain skills that will be more valuable in an AI world. It's not that you have to necessarily stay the same, or that staying the same will be productive in an AI-driven world, but that you should find specific skills that make you uniquely human, including things like connection between people, including things like just more specific types of thought that AI can't necessarily get to. Those are the kinds of things that you really should value in an AI-driven world, and not necessarily get fear-mongered by the fact that you might just lose a job and not have a place in the world in the future driven by AI. So yeah, definitely a more positive outlook, and happy to answer any questions about being a student in the AI world as well.
Right. So Sundar and Avanti would also be part of the answering questions. So put your questions out in the panel. And then I believe there's somebody that's going to moderate those questions. But before we jump into the questions, one more quick demo, basically. Just showing you the art of the possible, right? Because I think one of the asks from Leon and the other organizers, it's always good to see what's happening in the world. So this is the startup app that I mentioned that we're working on. And it's all about solving an age-old problem with your most important documents in a different way, right? So you upload your documents, you can share your documents, and this is the AI-guided assistance, right? So you basically are able to Avanti, you want to talk about like some of why you named it Vaulto, and what can you do with it? What's the promise with it?
Yeah, so I am not sure if anyone in the audience is an avid user of TikTok, but TikTok actually developed a AI agent within their app called TikTok Taco. And it was basically a way that, for example, if a video had a specific topic and you wanted to learn more about it, they integrated AI into it. So you could search specific words directly within the app. It's actually quite useful. So in the same sense, we wanted to make sure that we had an agentic component of the Vaultzy product, and it can help you do the same kinds of things. Like if you have a question about a document, like when it's going to expire, or also, what type of insurance policy might apply to that product, or sorry, that document that you've uploaded, or maybe something that you're missing. Basically, the examples given here, you have access to an AI agent directly within the app to kind of help you assist with those things. So we're kind of calling it like an AI life assistant to help you with important life documents and things like that.
And longer term, the way we see this is like for seniors, it actually completes your entire application for you, right? Because it has all your data through the other documents that you've uploaded, right? Your name, your email, your addresses. So it can actually complete your whole application for you. That's where we want to get to with this technology, right? All right. With that, I think we're open for Q&A.
Yes. So Soumya, if you want to get the next section going.